Hey guys, tonight we drift into one of those evenings that history can never quite shake off. You're stepping onto the deck of the RMS Titanic, April 14th, 1912, the last calm night before the ocean rewrote its name forever. And let me warn you right away, you probably won't survive this one either, not because of cold water and lifeboats, but because the slow rhythm of this story is going to weigh heavy on your eyelids until they sink like anchors. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you are and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing someone lying in bed in Tokyo while someone else is curled up on a sofa in Toronto. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is sharp as you cross the gangway, carrying the salt tang of the Atlantic. The Titanic looms above you, lanterns strung along her railings, a floating palace glowing against the deepening dusk. People bustle, voices carry, shoes clatter against planks, but you already sense something unusual in the mix. Beneath the excitement of luxury and spectacle, there's a low hum of unease, as though even the wealthiest passengers can feel a storm without clouds. You step inside, and the ship swallows the night. The entrance hall gleams with polished wood and brass fittings, marble steps curving upward into grandeur. A steward tips his cap, the faint smell of floor wax mixing with perfume trailing from first-class gowns. You pause, watching the swirl of humanity. Bankers and heiresses laughing too loudly, mothers guiding children, young couples staring at the chandeliers like they're stars brought indoors. Historians still argue whether people sensed anything off that last evening, whether the calm sea felt too calm, or whether that's just hindsight wrapping the night in foreshadowing. But as you watch, you catch fragments. A man muttering that the air is colder than it should be, another squinting through the window as if the horizon itself has a secret. Farther along the corridor, the smell of dinner begins to rise. Roasted meats, warm bread, butter melting on porcelain plates. The ship is already preparing for its grandest show, the last feast. You notice the way passengers glance toward the clock, eager for the appointed hour. For many, this meal is the pinnacle, the centerpiece of the voyage. And no one knows it will also be its final one. You drift to the first-class promenade, where ladies in elaborate gowns stroll arm in arm, their laughter floating like ribbons through the cold air. Men in crisp evening wear puffed cigars, trading gossip about stocks, politics, or the novelty of traveling on a ship that's been called unsinkable. The irony drapes itself across their shoulders, unseen but heavy. A child runs past, clutching a toy boat, wooden sails bobbing as though mocking the very giant he rides upon. Quirky tidbit. Some passengers brought pets aboard, dogs mostly, but even a few cats and birds. One story claims a woman walked her small Pomeranian along the deck that very evening, tiny paws clicking against planks as if nothing could disturb their routine. Imagine that, a creature too small to comprehend disaster padding happily across the world's grandest ship, hours before history tilted. As the sky outside deepens to a velvet blue, the Titanic hums with energy. The electric lights, still novel to many passengers, cast a steady glow, unflinching against the gathering dark. The ship's engines thrum beneath your feet, a low, constant heartbeat. You feel it in your bones, that sense of being carried forward across a calm sea, where the horizon stretches empty and endless. You wander past a group of musicians tuning instruments in a side room, bowstrings whispering against strings, the faint promise of music that will later echo far more hauntingly than anyone could guess. Their chatter is light, ordinary, their jokes about the cold air and tipsy passengers harmless. Yet every note they play tonight will be stamped by memory as something eternal. The corridors gleam, the floors vibrate softly, and passengers gather in small groups, some heading to the smoking room, others whispering about the lavish 11-course dinner that will soon unfold. You lean against the polished rail, watching the flow of humanity, the clink of glasses, the hush of slippers against carpet. The night is full of promise, and you can feel the ship itself holding its breath, as if it knows the script it's been handed. Outside, the stars sharpen in the cold. The ocean is glassy, unnervingly still, reflecting constellations like a giant mirror. Sailors mutter about how the sea feels wrong, too smooth, too deceptive. But no one interrupts the growing anticipation within the ship's gilded halls. Dinner waits, music waits, and fate itself waits just beyond the horizon. And so you walk deeper into the Titanic's heart, past lamplight and laughter, carrying with you that whisper of dread, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore. Tonight is just beginning, and the feast ahead will be remembered not for its flavors, but for the silence that swallowed them after. The corridors glow warmer now as stewards swing open heavy doors, guiding passengers toward the dining saloon. You slip in with them, the hush of footsteps swallowed by a space that feels more cathedral than ship. Polished mahogany panels rise toward ceilings painted cream, chandeliers drip light across white tablecloths, and rows upon rows of chairs march neatly in formation, each one ready for its occupant. The air hums with the clink of silverware being laid out, the faint scrape of porcelain plates set with care. You pause at the entrance, taking in the sight. This isn't just dinner, it's theater. Every gesture, every flourish of service, is part of a performance designed to remind the wealthy elite that they are not merely passengers, but royalty at sea. The scent of broth wafts faintly from the kitchens, laced with herbs and something richer, meatier, promising indulgence. Historians still argue whether first-class passengers truly realized the extravagance of that night's menu. Was it an indulgence taken for granted, or was it admired as a spectacle of culinary mastery? What is certain is that few ships, even among luxury liners, could rival the Titanic's kitchens. More than 100 cooks, bakers, and assistants worked furiously below deck, orchestrating a ballet of fire, steel, and steam to create the feast now unfolding. You take a seat near the back, unnoticed among the rustle of gowns and murmur of voices. The first course arrives: oysters, glistening on crushed ice, served with crisp slices of lemon. The diners lift their forks delicately, laughter rising as champagne glasses clink. A man at the next table brags about his investments in New York real estate. His wife hushes him, more interested in describing the hats she intends to buy once they dock. The oysters vanish quickly, leaving only shells glistening like pale fossils of an evening no one imagines will end. Quirky tidbit: the Titanic's wine cellar stocked over 1,000 bottles, from claret to champagne, each chosen to accompany a different course. Waiters moved silently between tables, topping glasses before they dipped too low, as though ensuring no pause, no emptiness, could disrupt the rhythm of luxury. Some of those bottles, recovered decades later from the wreck, still held their corks, the labels faded but intact. Imagine that, wine slumbering under the sea, unopened, as if the party never ended. The second course sweeps in: consommé Olga, a delicate broth garnished with scallops and herbs. The steam fogs glasses, and the warmth seems to push back the cool Atlantic air pressing faintly against the windows. You notice the way passengers linger over their bowls, savoring slowly, conversation softening as flavors settle. For a moment, the world is distilled into taste and texture, into the shared ritual of eating. The room grows louder as more courses flow: salmon with hollandaise, then filet mignon laced with truffle sauce. Forks glide, knives slice with careful ease, and laughter grows freer, warmer. One young couple raises their glasses, whispering to each other about how they will tell their children someday that they once dined aboard the greatest ship on Earth. The thought hangs sweetly in the air, unknowing of how their story will truly end. You lean back, watching stewards move like shadows, carrying trays piled with pheasant, lamb, and vegetables glazed to shining perfection. The music filters faintly from another room, waltzes, mostly, drifting like perfume across the tables. A man hums along, his head swaying slightly, his silver cufflinks winking in the light. Historians debate whether the musicians truly played during the meal itself or only afterward, but their presence is undeniable. They were there, weaving strands of calm into the atmosphere, binding together laughter, conversation, and the clatter of dining. You glance toward the far end of the room, where a woman in emerald silk sits rigidly, barely touching her food. She glances often at the windows, as if searching the darkness beyond. Her husband pats her hand absently, lost in a discussion with another man about shipping stocks. You wonder if she senses something others do not. The way the floor seems to hum a little stronger than it should, the way the sea outside is too still. The courses continue, relentless. Roast duck with applesauce, lamb with mint, squab on toast, asparagus tips, foie gras. Each dish a statement. Excess piled upon excess. Some diners lean back, their laughter more sluggish, their bellies protesting, but the plates keep arriving. It's indulgence disguised as duty. If the menu offers, one must accept. Quirky fact: in third class, down the ship's spine, passengers dine too, but on a simpler fare: vegetable soup, roast beef, potatoes, plum pudding. For many immigrants, it was the best meal they had eaten in months, perhaps years. On the Titanic, even the ordinary was extraordinary. As the 10th course arrives, cold asparagus vinaigrette, you feel the atmosphere shift. The laughter dips, the voices soften. Diners are slowing, though dessert and cheese still wait ahead. Champagne bubbles against glass, but even luxury has limits. One man jokes about rolling out of the dining room rather than walking, and the laughter ripples again, though weaker this time. By the time the final sweet dishes appear, peaches and chartreuse jelly, chocolate eclairs, French ice cream, the room feels bloated, like an orchestra straining at its final note. People push plates away half-finished, sighing, smiling lazily. Napkins dab at lips, chairs scrape softly, and voices drift toward parlors, smoking rooms, and the lure of music elsewhere on the ship. And you? You remain seated, watching the tables empty, staring at the crumbs and half-drunk glasses left behind. The Titanic has just performed its culinary masterpiece, the last supper it will ever serve. No one here knows it, but you can feel it. History is setting the table for something else entirely, a feast not of flavor, but of fate. The dining saloon empties gradually, its echo softening into a hush. You drift with the crowd, swept along corridors lined with patterned carpet and brass lamps glowing low. The air feels heavier now, saturated with perfume, tobacco, and the faint tang of roast meats that lingers stubbornly in your clothes. You imagine the ship itself inhaling all that excess, storing it deep in her steel lungs. You follow the flow of passengers into the first-class smoking room, where leather armchairs gleam beneath polished wood paneling. Men settle into chairs like kings on thrones, cigars glowing like tiny hearths in the dim light. The click of billiard balls echoes faintly from a corner, and waiters glide between tables balancing trays of brandy, port, and liqueurs. The conversations here shift in tone, no longer about fashion or theater, but politics, markets, the fate of empires. One man brags of fortunes in steel, another frets over the volatility of American railroads. The Atlantic hums just beyond the walls, unseen but omnipresent. Historians still argue whether any of these men spoke uneasily about the sea that night. Some accounts hint that passengers remarked on the cold, on the stillness, on the eerie absence of waves. Was it nervous intuition or just small talk polished into legend afterward? Either way, the air here seems weighted, like a parlor where smoke is only half the haze. You linger near the back, watching the ritual unfold. This, too, is theater, cigars as props, laughter as lines, fortune as costume. A steward offers you a glass, and you take it, the liquid sharp and warm on your tongue. The men talk louder now, their words jostling like the billiard balls clattering across green felt. Someone jokes about the Titanic herself. Unsinkable, they say, unless the gods themselves take offense. The laughter that follows is bold, but you hear the thin thread of irony beneath it. Quirky tidbit: the Titanic had a Turkish bath, complete with steam rooms, electric baths, and an elaborate cooling room tiled in mosaic. Some passengers spent their evenings sweating luxuriously before returning here for cigars and brandy, a ritual of indulgence layered upon indulgence. You can almost picture them, flushed from heat, shivering slightly as the cold Atlantic pressed invisibly just outside. Across the corridor, the atmosphere shifts. The first-class lounge is quieter, almost reverent. Women gather in clusters, their gowns trailing like waterfalls of silk, the glow of electric lamps gleaming against pearls and diamonds. Cards shuffle on tables, hands move with practiced grace, coins and chips clinking softly. The air smells faintly of lavender and powder, a a counterpoint to the smoke-filled cavern of the smoking room. You pause near a group playing bridge. Their laughter is delicate, almost brittle, as though they are playing not just for points but for distraction. A woman in ivory silk stares into her hand too long, eyes drifting toward the windows. Beyond the glass lies only blackness, a velvet sea pricked with faint stars. She blinks quickly, turns back to her game, and forces a smile. Historians debate whether anyone aboard sensed trouble before the impact, or whether all these accounts of uneasy glances and lingering silences were painted backward, stitched into memory to make the story cleaner. Did the wealthy of Titanic truly sit restless that night, or did later generations want them to? You can't decide. You only know the air feels charged, like the moment before a storm. Further down, in second class, the mood is livelier, simpler. The dining room there hums with piano music, passengers singing softly, couples spinning clumsily across a cleared patch of floor. The walls are plainer, the ceilings lower, but the energy is bright, almost innocent. You step inside, greeted by voices that feel warmer, freer. Here, laughter doesn't need to be rehearsed. It rises naturally, unguarded. One young man with calloused hands sings a ballad about home, his accent thick, his voice cracking but heartfelt. The others join in, voices weaving together until the whole room feels like a single instrument, vibrating with memory. The song is about Ireland, or maybe Scotland. You can't quite tell. It doesn't matter. It's about somewhere else, somewhere safe, and tonight it fills the room like a charm. Quirky fact: in steerage, third-class passengers often brought their own fiddles or flutes, keeping the music going long after midnight. For many, Titanic wasn't just transportation. It was a celebration, a chance to dance on solid floors before facing uncertainty in America. Their meals were simpler, their bunks crowded, but their evenings often rang louder with joy than those in gilded salons. You wander through, listening, watching the way fatigue finally begins to tug at people's shoulders. Laughter slows, hands cover yawns, cards are packed away, glasses drained. Even music softens, drifting into slower tunes, lullabies wrapped in foreign tongues. Somewhere below, you imagine the ship's engines throbbing like a massive heart, steady and powerful, unaware or unconcerned that the clock is ticking. The hours tilt toward midnight. The air cools, and you feel the ship adjust almost imperceptibly, a subtle sway, a whisper of movement that makes lamps tremble faintly. You pause, feeling the floor under your feet, wondering if it's only your imagination. But the musicians play on, the laughter fades gently, and the great ship sails steadily into the black. Somewhere in the shadows, you sense it again, the strange stillness of the ocean, unnaturally calm, unnaturally silent. It feels like the world itself has gone quiet, waiting. And though the passengers drift to their cabins, carrying with them the taste of oysters and champagne, the smoke of cigars, the echo of song, you remain awake, knowing the night holds more than just dreams. The corridors of Titanic hush as passengers retreat to their staterooms, lamps dim to soft halos against oak-paneled walls. You drift with them, through doors that close gently, into cabins that range from palaces of silk and gilt to modest bunks where trunks crowd the floor. The ship itself groans softly, steel stretching and shifting as though it too is preparing to rest. In first-class suites, the air is perfumed with lavender sachets, fresh flowers, and the faintest tang of sea carried in through open portholes. A woman sits at her vanity, brushing out her hair, each stroke of the silver brush catching the lamplight. She pauses now and then, listening to the creak of the hull, as though waiting for some other sound. Behind her, a husband folds his waistcoat with unusual care, smoothing each crease as if precision could stave off uncertainty. Historians still argue whether many first-class passengers truly felt unease that night or whether such tales grew later, embroidered into the legend. In the moment, you sense only restlessness, subtle but persistent. Further down the corridor, in smaller cabins, second-class families settle in. A child mumbles about the day, half dreaming, half awake, until his mother hums softly and his voice trails into silence. His father lights a final cigarette, leaning against the bunk, staring at nothing in particular. These are people caught between worlds, no longer European villagers, not yet American citizens, floating on a steel island that promises both hope and uncertainty. You can feel their exhaustion, heavy but uneasy, the kind of sleep where dreams are shallow and easy to shatter. In third class, the atmosphere is more crowded but warmer. Narrow bunks creak under shifting bodies, children tangled together like puppies, elders snoring softly. A fiddle still whispers in a corner, one last tune trailing off as fingers slip from strings. The air is thick with mingled scents, wool, stew, sea, sweat, but beneath it all lies a comfort in community. Even here, laughter lingers, drifting into dreams. Quirky tidbit. Some third-class passengers decorated their bunks with lace or small religious icons brought from home, tiny talismans of protection against the vast unknown. You notice one, a tiny wooden crucifix tied above a bunk, glowing faintly in lamplight as if it, too, keeps watch. As silence deepens, you return to the upper decks. The night air is cold, startlingly clear. Stars scatter across the sky in impossible numbers, brighter than you've ever seen. Without city lights, the heavens blaze, their reflection mirrored in the black mirror of the Atlantic. The sea is uncannily still, like glass stretched to the horizon. Not a wave breaks, not a ripple stirs. It's beautiful, mesmerizing, and vaguely terrifying. Sailors mutter that such calm seas are rare, almost unnatural, as though the ocean itself is holding its breath. You pace the deck, hearing only the steady hum of the engines and the faint creak of ropes in their pulleys. A steward pauses nearby, pulling his coat tight. "Cold one tonight," he murmurs, then adds, almost reluctantly, "colder than it should be." You nod, though you don't fully understand. Historians debate whether the freezing air, the glassy water, and the reports of ice warnings transmitted earlier that day were ignored or downplayed by the crew. Perhaps confidence blinded them, or perhaps routine made danger feel impossible. Either way, the stillness tonight seems louder than any storm. Near the bow, you find a small group of passengers leaning over the rail, pointing at the sky. They're watching the aurora borealis, faint green ribbons shimmering just above the horizon, a ghostly glow. One man swears it's a good omen, the heavens celebrating Titanic's voyage. Another mutters it looks more like warning fire. The debate continues softly, voices mingling with the sea's silence. You watch the lights flicker and fade, feeling a shiver that has little to do with the cold. Back inside, the grand staircase stands mostly empty. Its golden light seems softer now, shadows stretching across carved wood and wrought iron railings. You hear faint footsteps above, a steward extinguishing lamps one by one. The great clock on the landing ticks steadily, marking time with indifference. It is only minutes from midnight now. You pause there, standing in the heart of the ship, watching time itself narrow. Around you, hundreds of passengers sleep, unaware. They dream of New York, of fortunes and families, of new lives waiting just beyond the horizon. You alone seem awake, alert to the hush, the calm, the strange perfection of this pause. And then, so faint you almost doubt it, you feel the ship shift. A subtle shudder, like steel sighing against steel. The kind of tremor that could be nothing more than engines adjusting. Or everything. You hold your breath, listening to the silence. The lamps flicker faintly, and in that fragile moment, between calm and chaos, the Titanic sails on, her story balanced on a knife edge of time. The ship hums on, engines thudding faintly through the decks, as you wander back into the cool midnight air. The stars are so bright they look like shattered glass spilled across black velvet. The sea is still impossibly calm, an expanse of glass stretching forever. No wind, no waves, just silence broken only by the faint groan of steel and the steady pulse of machinery. It feels as if the world itself is holding its breath. Near the bridge, a handful of officers murmur over charts, their voices low. You linger close enough to catch fragments. Ice warnings from other ships, positions marked hastily in pencil, cautious glances toward the dark horizon. One officer shrugs, muttering that Titanic is unsinkable after all. Another frowns, insisting they reduce speed, but the debate dies quietly into the cold night. Historians still argue whether overconfidence blinded the crew or whether pressure to make record time kept the ship pressing forward. Whatever the truth, the bow cleaves the water at nearly full speed, slicing into the dark without hesitation. Down below, in the warmth of the third-class quarters, some passengers stir restlessly. A mother tucks a blanket tighter around her children. A young man, too wired to sleep, scratches a note into a small diary, writing about the ship's grandeur, the endless sea, the hope of work in America. His candle gutters, flickers, then steadies, leaving the words unfinished. These are lives mid-sentence, stories unaware of their own punctuation mark just ahead. In first-class staterooms, the hush is deeper. Wealthy passengers lie in beds canopied with silk, curtains drawn against the night. Yet even here, sleep is uneven. A woman wakes with a start, swearing she felt the ship tremble. Her husband rolls over, mumbling that she's imagining things, but she keeps listening to the silence. Lamps glow faintly in gilded sconces, their lights soft, their shadows long. In the corridors, stewards walk softly, extinguishing lamps, whispering to one another as if the quiet demands reverence. You wander again onto the open deck. The air slices colder now, your breath visible in the starlight. Ahead, the horizon is nothing but black, a seamless blend of ocean and sky. And then you notice it, a darker shape against the dark. At first, your eyes refuse to accept it, but slowly it sharpens, an outline vast, jagged, glinting faintly with starlight. An iceberg. The lookout's bell rings, once, twice, 3 times. A shout cracks the silence. Iceberg, right ahead. The voice carries down the deck, sharp as steel. You hear the scramble of feet, the frantic spin of a wheel, the telegraph clanging orders to the engine room. Titanic shudders, a groan rolling through her frame as she strains to turn. For a breath, it feels as though she might miss it. You hold your breath, heart pounding with the arc of the ship's swing. But then, the scrape. A low, tearing sound, not violent, but endless, like a knife dragging through cloth. The hull trembles, steel grinding against ice. The vibration runs through the deck into your bones, a sound you know means more than it admits. Above, ice showers from the berg, scattering like shattered glass across the deck. A few passengers laugh nervously, brushing it from their coats, joking that it's just a thrill to tell their friends back home. But you know, deep in the ship, water pours in, unstoppable, icy, lethal. Bulkheads fill, compartments swell, but on the surface, calm lingers. Passengers murmur, curious but unworried. A few slip coats over nightgowns and step onto deck, eyes wide at the cold. Officers reassure them it's nothing serious, just precaution. Lifeboats begin to stir in their cradles, ropes creaking softly. The night air thickens with confusion. Quirky tidbit. Titanic actually carried more lifeboats than regulations required at the time. But required meant space for only about half the passengers on board. The ship's designers thought lifeboats cluttered the deck, ruining the aesthetic of the unsinkable. And so, in a twist of cruel irony, half the ship will be left watching from the rails as the other half rows away. You move among the crowd, hearing snippets of disbelief. The ship can't sink. We'll just wait inside where it's warmer. Some laugh, others shiver. Children clutch their parents, wide-eyed, sensing tension they cannot name. Musicians gather on deck, instruments in hand, and strike a tune to calm the passengers. The first notes drift upward, soft against the stars. The ship is dying, and yet she sings. The hours blur. Lifeboats lower with creaks and groans. Some half-filled, others too late. The deck tilts, subtly at first, then undeniably. You stumble, catching the rail, as voices rise into a swell of panic. Shouts, prayers, sobs, all braided into the bitter cold air. The great ship shudders again, her bow dipping lower, the sea rushing up in black waves. You step back, no longer needing to follow every detail. You already know how the story ends. Titanic's pride, her wealth, her promise, all of it swallowed by the Atlantic in less than 3 hours. And yet, standing here in the final hush before chaos, what you remember most isn't the sinking. It's the stillness of that last feast, the laughter over oysters and lamb, the glow of chandeliers, the music of glasses raised in toast. That final moment of ordinary life, balanced on the edge of history. The lamps dim, the music fades, the story folds itself closed. So now, as you lie back, let the cold Atlantic slip away, Let the echoes of silver cutlery and distant violins soften into the quiet of your own room. The story of Titanic always seems immense. An iceberg, a ship, thousands of lives. But tonight, we've walked it step by step, hour by hour, as though you were there, feeling the hum of the engines and the hush of the night. What lingers most isn't the disaster itself, but the humanity threaded through it. A mother settling her children, a violin bow sliding across strings, a waiter balancing dishes with care. Ordinary gestures, shining for a final time. That's the real heartbeat beneath the legend. So breathe deeply. Picture the stars overhead, bright and steady. The same stars that shone over Titanic that night, still burning now, unchanged. Let them watch over you too. A reminder that even when stories sink into silence, the light carries on. Sleep well and dream gently.